Hi guys, my name is Sydney Little and I am doing Miller versus Alabama for my case brief. First I want to start off with the facts of the case. So in 2003, 14-year-old Evan Miller and a friend, Colby Smith, went to the trailer of another boy's house who's the victim in this case, Cole Cannon. Miller took it upon himself to beat Cannon, the victim, with a baseball bat. The boys then set the trailer that Cole Cannon was in on fire. Cannon was found dead inside and burnt inside the trailer. Evan Miller's case was set to proceed in Lawrence County Juvenile Court, but was then transferred to Lawrence County Circuit Court in Alabama after the decision that Miller would go up in front of a grand jury as an adult for capital murder during the course of arson. The grand jury ultimately found Miller guilty and he was sentenced to life in prison without the chance of parole. So the issues with this case is it cruel and unusual punishment for juveniles to be sentenced to life without the possibility of parole? Was Miller's 8th Amendment right broken when he was sentenced to life in prison? And when do we decide which juveniles are charged as adults? The rules of this case would have been the 8th Amendment, which is excessive bail should not be required, nor fine imposed, nor cruel and unusual punishment inflicted. So for my analysis, I talked about how Miller filed a post-trial motion for a new trial, arguing that sentencing a 14-year-old to life without the possibility of parole constituted cruel and unusual punishment in violation of the 8th Amendment, and the trial court denied the motion, but on an appeal, the Alabama Court of Criminal Appeals affirmed the lower court's decision. The Supreme Court of Alabama denied Miller's petition for writ of certiorari. I don't know how to pronounce it, sorry. So the conclusion, this case concluded by a court ruling in a 5-4 decision that life without the possibility of parole was cruel and unusual punishment, and they decided that life without parole is prohibited sentences for a juvenile, even if they are charged as adults. This was in 2012 is when they made the Supreme Court ruling of abolishing mandatory life without parole sentences for juveniles. But it was because of this case that they created that rule. So juveniles are no longer allowed to be sentenced to life without parole because of this case. I want to talk about this case for a second, because you have to look at 14 years old, is our children really, do they really have the mental capacity to know what they're doing or understand what they're doing? I think they do. Working at Butler County Juvenile Detention Center has showed me a lot about, how kids feel about their charges, and do they take them serious? Do they realize they were doing something wrong? And most of the kids that we get in there know what they did, and they know that they shouldn't have been doing it most of the time. So I wanted to also bring up a couple of Supreme Court rulings for juveniles. So in this, Roper versus Simmons in 2005, the death penalty for juveniles was abolished. Graham versus Florida in 2010 was non-homicide life without parole. Miller versus Alabama, which is the case that I studied, in 2012, they abolished mandatory life without parole sentences for juveniles. And then Montgomery versus Louisiana in 2016 made Miller's case retroactive. So I don't think that juveniles should be sentenced to life, because I I feel like they have more of a chance to become rehabilitated than most adults do. With that being said, do I think that every juvenile will be rehabilitated? No, because when I got my job, my boss always told me this is a repetitive workplace. We always get the same kids in. We get new kids in, but we usually get the same kids in most of the time. And then when they're out of there and they turn into they become 18, 21 years old, they usually go to county. We've had kids who went to county. And we even have some kids in there now that are bound over, and they'll be going to county when they get sentenced. So I do not think that I don't think life in prison without the chance of parole for juveniles is a smart move, and I'm glad that it's abolished. But this case was very interesting to study because you have to look at these kids, and we don't know the backstory. We don't know really the why or, what made them do this. I would have liked to have seen this actually in court. I think it would have been a really interesting case to really know what was the backstory that made them beat this other boy and burn his trailer with him inside of it. But we don't really have that. We're not able to do that, so you have to go on what you have. So thank you.